What do we have so far in the book? I see Christy, Paul, Stephen, Mika.
We're just missing Jason.
Yep. Is it Mark that's running the video stuff?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
He's on here, so.
Yep.
Yes, it's streaming live.
Okay, we're all set. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting held remotely with everybody practicing good, safe social distances. So if we can have a call to order and a roll call.
Weedman,
Here.
Mack,
Here.
Braden,
Here.
LaCroix,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Nash,
Here.
and Track.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. I'm going to skip the pledges. I don't really have a flag near me to be able to stand for it. So I need a motion to approve the agenda, including the amended personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Miller, Track,
Aye.
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay, as far as public comments go, if anybody is watching out in virtual land, you can send your comments into the chat, and we will address them at the end of the meeting if that is if we have any. So we will work on the public comment at the end of the meeting. Next is a presentation on the budget update.
All right, let's try this. Is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Just want to go over the tentative amended budget. Really quickly, the process is we'll talk tonight about the process in general of how we came to this amended budget, some of the numbers, and then just an overview of some of the changes that have happened during the course of the year. So I wanted to start off first talking about the process. Why are we amending the budget? And the biggest reason why is we're just adjusting our budget to reflect any of the activity that happened post-adoption. As a reminder, we adopted a budget back in September, and that was before we had finalized a contract with both unions. And there were a couple other changes in terms of grants, in terms of receiving some additional federal grant awards or state awards. And then obviously the last big one that we're seeing right now is all the changes that are happening with COVID-19. I really want to emphasize that this is tentative. There are changes that happen minute to minute, hour to hour. We're trying to stay on top of all of them as they come, and we'll give you a more formalized final version by Friday, May 8th. That's when it has to be posted in the paper. So you'll get any changes that we make from this by that Friday. We'll just lump them all together. So a little bit about the process. We do some internal checks and reviews of the current status of the accounts. We bring that tentative version to you for review, which is what this is. We then post it 30 days prior to our formal hearing. That formal hearing we are predicting to have on June 10th, immediately preceding the board meeting for adoption at the June 10th board meeting. So let's talk about the numbers. I focused in on the revenue because I think that's the biggest thing that's changed in light of everything that's happening right now. With everything going on with the coronavirus and information from the federal government and from the state, we're just seeing a lot of changes, and it is difficult to predict what some of those changes are going to be, but we do have connections with statewide organizations that are actively lobbying on our behalf to make sure that we get every dollar we're entitled to. But we're trying to stay on top of all of those updates and keep you informed about what's going on. So I'm going to talk briefly about some of those revenue sources. Right now for the levy, we're assuming a 10% reduction in current year collections. So what does that mean? That means that if we would have normally received about 50% of the 2019 levy by June 30th, we're predicting we're only going to be receiving 40% by June 30th. That does not mean, and I'm going to say this a lot of times, I think, that does not mean that that revenue is gone forever. It just means that we're not going to be receiving it by June 30th. That is our projections. That's a possibility. We don't know for sure. We're doing our best to guess what's the impact is of the coronavirus on these things. So we're not entirely positive that that's going to be the change, but that's our best estimate at this point. Other local fees, we're predicting a reduction in other local fees from SREC income and other student fees, just in light of the virus and the school closure. We're not going to have the opportunity for parents to come into the schools to register their students like normal. A lot of it has to go online, so we're going to see a little bit less student revenue just in the current fiscal year, possibly. Next year, we might see the rest of that. Evidence-based funding is the one thing that we've heard the state is endeavoring to cut all of the checks for. So we're not predicting any change in evidence-based funding for the current fiscal year. Other state aid, we're projecting the possibility of the transportation categorical. Out of 4 payments, we might only receive 3. And I want to emphasize might. The state, when we submit for transportation reimbursement, schedules 4 payments to the district. They do 1 in September, 1 in December, 1 in March, and 1 in June. And at this point, we've received 1 of the 4 payments. The other 2 have been sent to the state treasurer's office to be cut as soon as the money is available, and the 4th one would be released sometime in June. The issue with that is, as you'll see from other from other state aid, the concern is the state gets a lot of money usually right in April, and that's when it catches up on a lot of its past due bills, like the December transportation categorical payment. However, the state delayed the income tax collections from April to July. So instead of getting a big chunk of change in April, like they would normally get, the state's not going to get that big chunk of change until July. And because of that, we're predicting they're going to be a little bit late on some of their payments. Again, that's a possibility. This is conjecture at this point on a state level from state organizations and other reliable sources that we have. The last thing that we wanted to put in here was changes in the federal grants. There were a couple of grants where we received additional award money. It's important to note that if this revenue increases, it's a reimbursement. So as we spend money, we would get the money back from the federal government. So that's kind of why that increased, is we had some carryover funds from a previous year and some additional awards. It's important to note that even with this 14% increase in federal revenue, this does not include any FEMA money or any CARES Act money. It's interesting to note that when we made this presentation late last week, the information that we had at that time was we might not see the CARES money this fiscal year, we might see it next year. And then on Monday, we found out that we might be receiving it in the next 30 days. So this presentation is already short $240,000 in revenue in projections. That's an example of one of the changes that we would be announcing on May 8th once we bring all the different little changes together. But overall, substantially, this is the amended budget. I know I've said this a couple times, but I just genuinely want to be clear about this. Just because we are projecting not to receive those revenues by the end of the fiscal year, that doesn't mean we're not going to receive those revenues. Property taxes, by law, we're supposed to get them. Local fees, we may not receive them by June 30th, but we should receive them by the time school starts. Other state revenue, just because they're late on a categorical payment doesn't mean that they're not going to pay it. So I just want to really emphasize that when you see these numbers, it's not that the revenue is short and we're never going to see that revenue ever again. It's just we're not going to receive it by June 30th, possibly. And these are all conjecture. This is all the best information we have from state sources. So I want to be very clear that this is, again, just a possibility of not receiving this money by June 30th. So let's talk a little bit about the overall picture of the budget. So we've talked a little bit about the revenue. Salaries, we're projecting about a 1.1% increase. That's tied to the increase due to negotiations and the increase due to a few minor increases in FTE during the course of the year. Benefits increased just a little bit in relation to those increase in raises. Purchase services we're projecting to go down, and that is related to things like professional development that won't be happening by the end of the fiscal year. Negotiations with our transportation carrier to potentially cut payments to them. Food service isn't going to be providing as many meals as they normally do during this time of year, so we're projecting a decrease in purchase services. When it comes to supplies, we're also predicting lower utilities and lower purchase of supplies. April through June is usually a heavy purchasing time for the school year, just as schools start to ramp up for next school year. They make their purchases now and start getting in the queue so it arrives over the summer and they can unbox and unpack and prepare for the classrooms to start the school year. So with a lot of schools closed right now to even receive the goods, as well as some of the companies not even being open to receive orders, we're predicting that we will see a reduction in the purchase of supplies between now and the end of the year. Non-capitalized goods is another example of that, where if you're buying different items, chances are those purchases were made towards the end of the fiscal year, and we probably won't be making those purchases by the end of this current fiscal year. Capital outlay, the tentative budget I have presented for you is assuming that we will reject all bids tonight. Obviously, depending upon board action on that, we can make that amendment to this amended budget and give you updated numbers based upon that. The one area that we are seeing a small increase in is outplaced tuition. We've seen an increase in the number of students who are being outplaced, an increase in enrollment in that area, which of course then results in higher private placement costs. And then finally, you'll just see for debt service payments, that just stays flat. So there's no increase or decrease in light of what's going on with the coronavirus. Hone in a little bit more, we'll talk specifically about a couple of our bigger funds. The education fund, again, we're assuming that 10% reduction in property taxes as a possibility. We're talking about a possible reduction in the collection of fees from students. And we're assuming a small reduction in other state grants, just assuming that they'll be late on payments, that we might not receive those payments by June 30th. And again, the federal grants, which we talked about at the beginning. Raises were talked about, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay. This is where a lot of those areas that we talked about on the overall slide happen, as the Ed Fund is our biggest fund. Operations and maintenance. The biggest pieces here, again, are going to be the other local revenue. Part of that is reduced facility rentals. We're not going to be seeing, obviously, our buildings being used as much as people practice social distancing. So we won't be seeing as much in terms of facility rentals. We also, as part of that other local, is SREC income, the income from the solar panels, as we continue to work through all of the red tape and bureaucratic work that we have to do to get that revenue. But we're projecting we won't see that probably now until the next fiscal year. Salaries, you're seeing the increase there. And then you're seeing down with supplies, decrease in supplies. Obviously, with the buildings closed, there's not as much custodial services needed for purchasing supplies, cleaning supplies, paper products, etc. And then finally, this is the area with the no meta view roof and other capital projects that we might not be doing this summer, just in light of the buildings being closed and practicing social distancing. Debt service is pretty straightforward. It's just the property tax potential reduction by the current fiscal year. The one good news here is that we have been seeing some better than anticipated interest revenue. So we were able to increase our other local revenue projections for that. Transportation fund, this is that categorical payment I was talking about. So the state gives the 4 reimbursement payments, September, December, March, and June. And we are anticipating possibly only receiving 3 of those by June 30th, with the 4th one coming sometime after July 1st. And then finally, the purchase services, you're seeing a reduction down there under expenditures for the potentially renegotiated Durham contract, which we'll be talking about later tonight. So I've talked about a couple of these things, but I really wanted to hammer home some of those pieces for you. So assumptions or material changes. The biggest piece here is just the potential decreased property tax collections by June 30th. So that's a $1.8 million swing just there alone for the current fiscal year. I don't want to overemphasize this, but I think it's important to just emphasize again, this just means that we're not anticipating to receive it by June 30th. It doesn't mean that we're never going to see it. The rest of the money we should see in the next fiscal year. We just may not receive it as timely as we normally do. So if this is inaccurate, if we hear anything new from the county or from the state, we'll obviously update this and give you the positive news about that. Also want to publicly thank the Lake County Board for acting on this back earlier in April. They had a meeting where they took advice from districts like us and Libertyville, 128 and others that have all respectfully requested that they don't extend property tax deadlines or remove late payment penalties precisely for this reason, because we know that if they did that, there's a potential that that property taxes may not be paid on time and we might be in a worse financial position for it. So thanks to the Lake County Board for hearing our appeal and not giving extensions. We're also predicting no SREC income in the current fiscal year, but again, that's something that we'll predict for next fiscal year then. A delayed transportation categorical payment of about $500,000. We'll receive that after July 1st. The decreased facility rentals is a minor $25,000. But we are seeing increased interest receipts of about $40,000. Switching over to the expenditure side of things, the increased salaries added up to about $374,000. If we do not do the Meadowview roof, pending board action tonight, that would save the district $600,000 in the current fiscal year. Reduced transportation costs we're predicting would go down by about $322,000 in the current fiscal year. Food service would decrease about $189,000, fewer substitutes. And the one point about additional grant purchases is we've amended the budget to show what could potentially be purchased. So $398,000 doesn't guarantee that we will buy $398,000 more materials or more services. It's just that's the amount we were awarded in grants. So most likely that number would be lower as we try to figure out how best to use those grants in light of schools being closed and in light of some of these other moving pieces. The state's giving updates daily and weekly about some of these federal grants and extensions of timelines and deadlines, but just trying to capture everything that we are supposed to spend according to our knowledge by the end of this fiscal year. There were some conservative additional tier money purchases. We didn't make a lot of additions during the current year. A lot of it we talked about In previous meetings, we increased an occupational therapist from 0.8 to 1.0 FTE. There was a Newsella subscription for teaching and learning at the beginning of the year, and then we hired an additional 0.5 pre-K staff member just for the current fiscal year. And that all of that added together was about $75,000. Less utility expenditures would save the district about $65,000 with the buildings being closed. And again, that outplaced tuition, we're seeing an increase of about $150,000. Any questions?
Hey, John,
Yes.
is there any concern at all that the state might prorate the EBF funds? That seems to me to be a pretty big assumption that they're not going to.
So everything that we're hearing, so that's where this is kind of a key difference between talking about future and current fiscal year. Everything that I've been hearing is they've already assigned evidence-based funding to all the districts for the current fiscal year, and they're going to do everything they can to make that the last thing that they cut. If they have to cut anything by the end of the fiscal year, they're hoping that evidence-based funding is the last thing they touch, because they know how districts are reliant on that. In terms of next fiscal year, Mary might be a little bit better to able to address that, but the information that we're receiving from our professional organizations and lobbyists are that there's a high probability that EBF will be prorated next year. But during the current year, which is what this is addressing, I wouldn't say just hopeful, because hopeful makes it sound like we don't have any knowledge. We feel pretty confident that we're not going to see cuts in the current year.
John or Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, as far as the EBF funds go, the cuts come by tiers first, right? Is they reduce tier, well, we're in tier 1, so they would reduce tier 4, then reduce tier 3, 3, and then 2, and then finally work their way down into tier 1. So they would have to cut quite a bit, probably to get down into where we're sitting, correct?
Absolutely. So just a quick overview of that. The law was structured in such a way, because we're in Illinois and we know that the state likes to prorate things sometimes. So when the law was first written, it was written in such a way as to try to make it hurt less for tier 1 districts and tier 2 districts. So if you were a tier 4 district, and they do end up having to not fund it fully next year, as a tier 4 district, you would lose all of the additional tier money that you had been receiving for the last 2 or 3 years, all the way back to the beginning of evidence-based funding. And that would be your new base funding minimum. And then that way, all of that money that the state would save, not having to make those payments as base funding minimum payments to tier 4 and tier 3 districts, that money would help make the tier 1 districts whole. So they've done a couple of different things in structuring the law to make sure that it doesn't hurt as bad for tier 1. That being said, I still think that some of the projections that we're seeing are, even though we may not be cut as bad as some tier 4 districts, we still may see cuts.
John, are you hearing anything about the fair tax? Because the EBM was already underfunded. We needed the fair tax to pass in order to fully fund EBM. Are you hearing anything about that?
The last piece of information we heard from our professional organizations is Pritzker has took that threat off the table. I believe the original thought was Pritzker said, we're not going to do additional funding to evidence-based funding if there's no fair tax passed. And I think Pritzker, in light of everything that's happened with the virus and the state closure and school closures, has backed down from that threat. So I don't have that same thought that, and the professional organization doesn't have the same thought that there's any correlation between the fair tax being passed and any funding for evidence-based funding. I think they're more worried right now about how they're going to fund education, keep it going next year, just in light of losing some sales tax revenue and losing some of the other pieces, delayed receipts of income taxes, things like that.
Okay, does anybody else have any more questions?
Hey, John, this is Tamika. You had something on one of the prior slides in terms of interest receipts. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood about or so. Can you speak to that? Is that money owed to interest payments owed to the district from external entities, and by whom? Can you just expound on that, please?
Absolutely. So best way to look at this is the way the budget works and the way most school districts receive their revenue is it's not unlike payroll where you see a paycheck every 2 weeks or twice a month or what have you. The vast majority of the school district's revenues comes in the form of property taxes. And we receive a lot of those revenues from May through August, September in that area. So what ends up happening is you get this big spike in the amount of money you receive towards the end of a fiscal year and at the beginning of another fiscal year. And then that money slowly goes down over time as you make your payroll payments and things like that. So it's supposed to last you through the rest of the fiscal year. So obviously, as that money sits in investment accounts or other things, it starts collecting interest on those things. So we work with PMA to try to set up cash flow projections of when that money would need to come due so we can structure CDs and other legally viable investments so that we can maximize the most interest we can possibly receive on that money. So that's kind of how that happens. We tend to have a lot of money towards the beginning of a fiscal year or right at the end of a fiscal year, and then we invest that so that we get good interest returns in the meantime until we need it come March, come February, things like that.
Gotcha. Thanks, John.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Next part of the board meeting is board reports. Anybody have? I don't have any listed. Did we have any board reports that we need to discuss?
I just had a couple quick things. First, I just wanted to publicly thank the Grays Lake Feed Store. They donated over 330 packs of seeds that have almost all been distributed through the seed library. So wanted to thank them. I had an interview with a GMS student who's earning her citizenship badge and wanted me to bring to the board a concern that students who take band cannot take art and encore classes at both Frederick and GMS. So I said I would pass that on. And then I sent you an email about the 7 questions IASB webinar, and I'm not going to go through those, but just there was an overwhelming consensus around next steps for boards. And those 2 next steps would be to identify the assumptions upon which we're making decisions, and then also generate scenarios that we're preparing for and communicate those very transparently. And I know transparency is important to our board, so just thought I would share that with you too. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, this is Christy. Just a quick note that anyone is welcome now that it's remote, especially any board member is welcome to attend the EdRed monthly meeting. So that is on Monday, and you should have each received the Zoom info. If you can join, would love to have you. They will have a speaker from the IASB, and it's always very informative. So hope you can make it. If not, I'll provide a readout.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Jason. Excuse me. I also attended the webinar on the post-pandemic budget given by IASB. I thought Christy's overview was comprehensive, and I think she highlighted the main points. The need for a communication plan, I think that's kind of what we're doing and what Mary did last meeting. But I'm wondering if there isn't something more direct that we need to do, and it's probably a discussion topic for offline, but just really communicating, what assumptions we're going with, what would best case and worst case scenarios look like, just so that, our constituents are fully aware of kind of what constraints we're up against. But overall, I think Christy's summary was right on spot on everything that they emphasized in that meeting.
So are you proposing that we put something out like on the web, like on our website or something that's post, reasons why, like the amended budget or what we're assuming? Is that what you're proposing?
That's what I'm wondering. I guess I'm wondering if, putting out an amended budget, obviously it's for, things that have changed since then, most notably COVID-19 situation, but do we need to put something out? It's like, hey, this is our, something that's outside of, because frankly, people don't often pay attention. I just think it'd be good if we put something on our website, perhaps, saying, hey, this is kind of how this is affecting us. This is, the worst that we see that could happen. And I know there's a dearth of information right now. We just don't know what to expect. And that could get continually updated as we become aware of more facts. I don't need maybe like a section on our website that just is like, updated financial situation due to the COVID-19.
Okay.
I think that might especially be warranted because we were kicked off YouTube on the night that we were talking about some significant decisions, the last meeting. So I think I would be game for helping with that, Jason.
Okay, Paul, can you put that down as an item that we either need to discuss or move forward with?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anybody else? Okay, superintendent report. I assume she left you something.
So this is Paul Lewis. I'm the assistant superintendent. Dr. Glickman apologizes for not being with us tonight, but asked me to give a brief update about some of the things that we've been doing and working on. So first, the middle school principals have been working very hard at determining how we can celebrate our 8th grade students for graduation. So while some of these things have not been made public yet, we're hoping that all the surprises won't be shared out too quickly. But one of the big things is obviously we have the requirement that we can't have an on-site graduation. And so each of the buildings are going to be working together, so both of the schools will have a similar experience, but obviously different because of the size of the school. So a similar experience where there'll be a video that will celebrate each graduate by name. We're also going to be providing each student with a celebratory t-shirt designed by a student at the school, at each of the schools as a remembrance of their time in the district. This is one of the secrets. Each student is also going to be getting a yard sign delivered to their home to recognize them as a graduation. So if people are walking by in neighborhoods, they'll know that we have a graduate living in that home. So that's been a new thing, but we're wanting to find a way to publicly recognize the graduates. And those are going to be delivered the week of graduation. And so the principals are still working out the details about what all of those things will be, but their staffs are very anxious to make it memorable for our students. And so I think that's the important part. And so more information will be shared as those details have been figured out. We also wanted to share our appreciation and gratitude to Foundation 46. They have funded a number of hotspots for our students who don't have internet. And so my colleague Amanda Woodruff has been working with Brian Kalish in the tech department to have those ordered, and we're working on a delivery method as soon as they come in. You may understand that those are a hot commodity at the moment. And so they did a good job of locating, but the foundation has agreed to fund those for us. And they also are working on, they're offering to raise funds to meet our needs that we're become more aware of during all of this pandemic. So the foundation is being a very strong partner and realizes that may not even know what we're missing at the moment, but they're offering some support with fundraising. So that's a really great thing. Up to a few hours ago, we continued to work on all kinds of things. One of the major events that some of us have been working with our union representatives were how were we going to get materials for our students back into their hands. So we're working on a plan to have all those materials available for a pickup. We have agreed that we do not feel comfortable having students enter the building. So we're going to be doing that with adults and then through a systematic approach to get all those materials out to students. And as you think about it, there's lots and lots of materials. So all the art projects that are still hanging up in the hallways, all the band instruments that are still in some of the cubbies. We have, unfortunately, gym lockers that need to be gone through. We have regular lockers and desks and all of the student materials. We also have things like yearbooks. We're working with the publishers for that. We also have report cards to get home. And so when we think about all of the things we have to do, the pickup isn't going to be scheduled until the end of May or early June. And so we're also working on a plan for the Chromebooks for our 8th graders who will be leaving us. And so the list just continues to go on, but those are, we're working on plans for safety for our staff who will be working on them, but also then a systemic process to get parents to be able to drive up, not get out of their cars, not enter the buildings, to have all those materials. So I talked about report cards. So we collectively and across most of the school districts, we left right at the very beginning of trimester 3. I think we had 6 or 7 days, maybe, of trimester 3. So it's impossible for us to assign grades. So we're going to have a modified report card to go home for students at the end of this year. We also have been working on our summer school opportunities. And so our colleague Heather Lorenzo and Wendy Chiswick have been working on ESY, that stands for Extended School Year. And that's for students who have an IEP and have determined that they need to have support over the summer before or in case of slide. So we're working on that. It'll be a digital experience, an online experience. They've already begun working on that extensively. Just yesterday, a group of us met about the Title I summer school program and our EL summer school program. I think we came up with a very, very good plan. And it's going to look a little bit different than the remote learning, where we're going to be planning it that students will be actually on the computer for a certain amount of time every day with their teacher. And so that we can have direct instruction, a little bit more direct than all of our remote learning plans have been consistently. So summer school is in full force. We're still having some questions about the enrichment program or if there's other additional programs that we need to consider. We've been gathering information from all of our local school districts to see, and most are, from right now what I've gathered, most are continuing with ESY because that's a legal requirement. And if they have something, if they have a Title I program, they're continuing with that. We're not hearing a lot of additional summer opportunities for academics. Part of it is because they'll be online. And we even heard from the union this afternoon that for teachers to continue, it's been stressful. It's been a tremendous amount of work. And we also realize that the number of students, the most important students who would benefit from them may have been the students who have not been engaging in our current remote learning to the best of, to the fullest. And so that's also a difficulty. So lots of summer school decisions are still coming. We also we wanted you to know that we have begun thinking about how that we could potentially get more devices to our K-2 students for the future, because we are fully aware that the governor has mentioned to all school districts to consider if schools don't open in the fall, and we need to start the year with a different looking plan. And so we're investigating ways to determine if we can get some more devices for K-2 students. It's only a conversation, and of course we would need to include you when we have some ideas or thoughts about it. But there are also We're thinking about maybe using some of that CARES Act money to support that. The governor is making technology high priority for that money. We did find out today through our colleague Amanda Woodruff and one of our principals who watched a webinar that there will be a grant application. They say coming soon that we'll have to be submitting. We also found out that that money has to be shared with all of our private schools as well. So just like some of our other categorical grants that we get, we have a portion to our private schools. We heard that that was likely going to be part of the grant application as well. So we might be able to use some of the CARES money for those devices. And we also have begun looking, our business office has begun looking at financing options. Right now, the rates for financing are very low. And so it does, it's a favorable time if we do need to consider that. But again, it's only a conversation. And the other things that the administrative team has been working on is all those questions about what would it look like when we open school up again. There's been many articles, many information, lots of information shared with us about alternating schedules or all digital, or how are we going to deal with social distancing if we are back in school, and how things might and would likely need to look different than what we've done in the past, even for our opening days with all of our staff. So we've just begun that. The hard part is that it's all unknown. So we just are trying to brainstorm things that we'll need to think about. So that was kind of our fast update of all the things that we've been working on. On top of having a remote learning planning day last week that was successful, we have other remote learning days coming up, planning days coming up. So we've been determining what's the best use of that time as well. So I think those were all of the things that I was asked to talk about. I certainly am glad to answer any questions about the things that I've shared.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have a
Okay.
question, Paul, but it just seems like there's so many juggling, so many balls in the air and plates, and just another expression of thanks and gratitude to you and to the teachers and for everyone who's been working so hard. So thank you.
We appreciate that. There are a lot of juggling balls going around, and every day it seems like the balls are changing. And so we seem to get different information, but we're trying our best. We have an amazing team, and everyone's trying to do their best. It is exhausting, though.
Okay. Next is committee report. So we have the Community Engagement Committee and Community Connection Team.
Stephen, you want to go first, or you want me to? Okay. Okay. What's that?
Just go ahead, start off. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So just a quick review. The Community Connections team has worked on 3 primary projects. The first one is helping support the grab and go so that people who can't get to GMS have been connected with other volunteers who are picking up those meals and dropping them off. So the total is 12,280 meals per Lynn's update, and the Community Connections team doesn't take credit for all of that, but we've been part of that. So in addition, the Woodview has a little seed library that they've installed at GMS temporarily, and within 48 hours, all of the seed packs, which were based on Three Sisters crops, had been distributed. And then again, as I mentioned, over 330 packets of seeds that were donated from the Grays Lake feed store. But in addition to that, there have been a lot of donations, and they're all heirloom seeds. And if you know anything about gardening, those are valuable seeds, and they've been distributed throughout our community. And if they grow, a conservative estimate is that would be several thousand pounds of produce to add to food security. Who needs there's diminishing a grocery bill later, or feeding people. So that's kind of exciting. And then letters of encouragement. I wanted to share a picture with you, so I'm going to try to share a screen quickly. But Park was a distribution place on Saturday and Sunday for letters of encouragement and prepackaged snacks and masks. And I'll show you this now. No, I might not show this to you. Hang on one second. Okay, well, it disappeared. So I'll try to find it later. But the picture was really heartwarming, just of boxes of all these different snacks and treats and handwritten signs from kids, big ones, small ones, and then a whole bunch of letters made out of construction paper. And those were hand delivered to Condell Hospital for the healthcare workers, some of whom live in the park community and in the other neighborhoods in our community. So that was pretty exciting. In terms of a broader strategy, as I mentioned, the idea that communicating assumptions and communicating scenarios is important as we move forward and might be aligned with the community engagement strategy. Now I am going to share something that will show up. This is a chart that we could use to brainstorm. And you can tell me if you can see it. Can you see it now? And it's just, I kind of vomited ideas that I've heard in various places. But if we wanted to take a look, John, can you see it? Is it too small? Okay. So there's assumptions, financial assumptions, social assumptions, structural and instructional, and then scenarios, a good, better, best, that we could use if we wanted to brainstorm together later in the meeting or in closed session. I don't know if it's aligned with closed session, but if we wanted to, we could throw out more bullets and then condense those into 1 to 5 assumptions that we could post on the school board tab or send out through email or another venue. So just wanted you to know that that was something that was in the works as well. Okay, now you shouldn't see it anymore. You don't see it, right? Okay. All righty. And then the last thing I wanted to report is that the goal of the Community Connections team was to create connections between people and between people and resources. And at this point, we've made connections in several places. Saddlebrook community is an elder community neighborhood by us. We have connections there, in Carillon, at Condell, Grace Lake Rehab, Grace Lake Feed Store, and certainly lots of connections among volunteers that have been very positive. I haven't heard anything negative. So just want you to know that that density is important to social fabric and is growing. So we could use that now. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything more you want to add to that?
No, Christy, thank you. You hit all the nuts and bolts of that, but I just add to the public record our thanks for all of those volunteers who are serving on this community connection team, like all of us on this call. They have kids or a kid or multiple kids, e-learning, and they are giving of their time and talent to put themselves out there for the benefit of the community and really pulling together. So it's really a sight to behold for Christy and I to be part of this. We had sent some little appreciation notes to each of them, which was a very positive thing, and just showing how valued they are to not only to the district, but to all of us as neighbors. So we continue to have our Thursday morning meetings, and each meeting I feel, and I would venture to say you agree with me, Christy, each meeting is a rejuvenation of the week for me to see how how this really is impacting. And I think, as Christy mentioned, it's just going to continue to grow and be able to serve the community in a non-pandemic time too. In dangerous situations and non-dangerous situations, we hope it'll be effective. So it's that's all I would add just to the public record. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
no. Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Drax,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
All right. We had scheduled a closed session meeting for a personnel hearing, but that is not going to happen tonight. So now we can move on to the action items. The first action item is the discussion and action regarding the Meadowview roof project bids and award of a contract / rejection of bids.
So I'll just talk about that. So as we've talked about at the last board meeting, Mary and I have been putting a lot of work, and Keith has been putting a lot of work into trying to get this roof off the ground, no pun intended, for the last several months. And then obviously as we got closer and closer to the finish line, the coronavirus hit and schools closed. And there were some financial concerns that were raised, hence the amended budget, hence a lot of these other things. It is currently the administration's recommendation that we reject all bids and hold off on the project until the next fiscal year. What that does for the district is it gives us some financial flexibility for the next, basically for the next 12 months. The money that we would have originally spent on the roof can now be spent in other areas if there were other emergency needs that come up in the next 12 months. We don't foresee any emergency needs, but that's the whole point of emergencies, right? You can't always foresee what's going to be happening. So we think that it's prudent at this time to hold off on that project until the next fiscal year. We're not concerned with any items such as leakage or mold. We feel very confident that, I mean, this is what we did last year. We patched the roofs and we had a pretty high quality patch job done, and we've had a lot of success with patching. The roof is not in such bad shape that it can't make it through another summer. We also believe that just in light of everything that's happening with the virus, having that money in the bank would give us all a little bit more peace of mind. There was one, as I mentioned in the memo, there was a school maintenance project grant that the school district received to do that roof. However, the timeline on that is 2 years from the date that they dispersed the funds, and we have not received those funds yet. So we are not at risk of losing that grant if we don't do that project this summer. Also, I believe that next summer, it's hard to predict the future, but I believe that next summer we would see some favorable bidding opportunities as well. So in light of all of those reasons, we feel like the most financial sound decision and the best recommendation we can give to the board at this time is to hold off on the Meadowview roof PIP for 1 year and just do a quick patch job for this school year, which we are confident would be great, and then reapproach this towards the next.
So when you say patch job, you mentioned there's currently no leaks. Are we just doing light maintenance to prevent any, or are we going to, wait and see if it leaks and then make the patch?
So I'll let Keith speak a little bit more to it. But generally what it would be is that we would do some inspections of the roof and go up there and say, okay, this looks like an area that could cause a problem. Let's make doubly sure it doesn't cause a problem and let's patch it. But I'll let Keith speak some more to that.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that would be correct. I mean, I'll have them go up and really good educated look at the roof. I'm sure they will do some caulking around flashings, around the chimneys, any penetrations that are through the roof. I'm not anticipating a big bill. Granted, I haven't been up on the roof in 2 months, a little more. But it'll make it through another year. I can tell you that. It'll make it. I don't think there's any roof leaks that I'm aware of at this point. But we will know more once we get back in the buildings and really give everything a good look over. But from what I've been understanding through Frankie and Chuck, who have been going in the buildings twice a week, they haven't found anything major. Just checking the buildings twice a week, excuse me. So I don't know. Any other questions?
And just to be clear on that as well, I mean, we haven't had a water issue in the district for 7 or 8 years. And the issue we had was at Frederick, and it wasn't related to the roof, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Keith?
Yeah, that was several years ago when we had the sprinkler pipe rupture. And we really didn't have any mold to speak of. It was remediated I guess is the word, by ACR. They cut the drywall out just to make sure we didn't have any about 18 inches up, and replaced the insulation and patched us back up, and we've been running fine since.
So we feel very confident in the inspections that we do, our regular maintenance that we do on the roofs, and even down to our HVAC systems. We have an excellent provider of our HVAC systems that are up on the roofs inspecting these units once a month at least. So we feel very confident that any patching that we do would be more than sufficient to guarantee that it would make it through another summer, another school year.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Are you confident the patches would last for 2 years if we are in a situation next year where our revenue continues to be depleted and now we've used the 600,000 and if it requires more patching or repairs, we're at a point now then when we have less money than we have now to pay for the repair?
Good question. Would it make it? I'm sure. Like, how do I want to say this?
I'm sorry, Keith. I'm not trying to put you in an awkward
That's
position.
all right. So, I mean, I'm passionate, as John knows and Mary knows, about getting a roof put on. For getting a roof on, but I also understand the money situation. And I agree with them that we should err on the side of conservative right now. And I guess trying to look into a crystal ball, I don't know what it's going to be like in 2 years. I mean, there may be another grant that will help us purchase more of the road. But would it make it another 2 years? I mean, you keep throwing money at it and patching it, it's going to make it. But I mean, eventually, I don't know. Eventually, you're going to need to put a roof on it.
How old is the roof now?
Let's see. The building was put up in 95. What was that? 25, 26 years old?
25 years. So that's another reason why we're doing the roof, or why we were originally going to be doing the roof now, is it is technically at the end of its life cycle. That doesn't mean it's completely failed. It doesn't mean that there's issues with it. It's just most roofs last about 25 years. We're at about 25 years, so this is about the time we should consider doing it. That being said, because we're not seeing large issues with it, that's why we feel so confident delaying this project for one more year. I think another piece of this too is we've patched it once before last summer and made it through a school year just fine this last school year. So we have the history of knowing, okay, this is what we need to do and here's how we need to patch it to help it survive another year. So I don't want to give the impression that it's on its last legs or anything. It's a good roof. It's just getting towards the end of its life is all. The other piece I really want to hammer home, I think, is by this time next year, we'll have a lot better idea of what's going on financially for the district. We'll know a lot more about evidence-based funding and what money we're receiving from that. We'll know a lot more about property taxes and when we're receiving those. We'll have received all of those by that point. Well, there's just going to be a lot more knowns, I think, come next spring and even into the fall of where we stand financially. That would make us feel a lot better about putting this off one more year. And that whatever happens, we'll have the time to make those decisions about, okay, do we need to do the roof next year? How do we, if in your worst case scenario, we'll have time to make those decisions about, okay, we might still need this money, but we feel very confident that we'll know a lot more come next fiscal year.
I have a question for Keith. Approximately how much does a patch job cost, rough order of magnitude?
Last year's was just under 15,000. This year, I'm estimating, and again, I haven't been on the roof in a while due to not being in. I'm going to say between 8 and 12, maybe 5 to 12. I'm just estimating. But I mean, I understand what you're asking, because eventually, at what point do we keep throwing money at it? Then we should have just put a roof on it.
I just was wondering if it was, $20,000, $50,000, or 1/6 the cost of a new roof, and then you're starting to get to a point where that decision becomes a little more difficult in my mind.
Right. And I would agree with you as we keep progressing and pushing it off, as Christy was asking. I think that number is going to continue to go up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Valleys are going to start giving away. So you're going to tear the valley out, reflash it, reshingle it, and then continue with the shingles, the old shingles, and then the rest of it. But just from knowing, I know you'll make it through this year.
Is the work to patch a roof warranted in any way?
Probably the new shingles they put down. And if they were doing flashing, the flashing would probably be included, but it wouldn't do anything for the older shingles that are on the roof. They would probably warranty what they did, I guess what I'm saying.
Okay. And then my last question, the amount of the grant we got for this, was it, how much was that in comparison to the total cost of the roof? I forget.
Well, what was the grant, 100,000, John?
I don't have that information in front of me. Mary, do you have that by chance?
I think it's
Okay.
50,000.
Now you can hear me. It's
Oh,
it's 50,000 and it's a matching grant.
yes, you are correct.
So in no case, it doesn't sound like we would do anything to jeopardize, I guess, the statute of limitations on that grant. We're just deferring this for a year.
Yeah, we've talked to the state already about this. Do we even need to amend it to say, hey, we're not doing it this year? And the state said, no, as long as you do it within 2 years from when you receive the money, you don't need to even amend your original grant. Your award is still in place. So even if it was at the very end of next summer, at this point, we'd still be well within the timelines of getting it done.
John, the state is currently running a $6.2 billion shortfall. Is there any reason to think that they will have to prorate grants because if EBM money is the first priority, will they be prorating up their grants like the one that we have? Do you think? And I know that's just speculation. I didn't know if there was any history of that.
In my experience, the state doesn't normally retroactively prorate things. So once they've agreed to $50,000, they give you the $50,000. If there was any concern about proration, it would be any future grants or any future monies that we would receive. So evidence-based funding for next year, or transportation reimbursement rates on next year's transportation. So I personally am not worried about them prorating this or not cutting the $50,000 for it. It would be, my concerns are more about what's going to happen next fiscal year in state grants and evidence-based funding on next fiscal year.
And I can add to that this grant is an appropriation for this fiscal year. So the state has already appropriated those funds. And when I spoke to Deb Vespa, who's the business official in Springfield for the Illinois State Board of Education, she indicated that the monies were going to be released in the next week or two. And so the state has already set aside money for this grant, and it's going to be released very soon. So to John's point, there isn't a risk of the state making a change to that grant. Christy, when you refer to the state's the governor's predicted budget shortfall, the $6.2 billion is for next fiscal year. And so that's that uncertainty that we have about funding for school districts, because the governor has indicated the challenges at the state level. We will await Springfield's adoption of that budget and appropriations for education, which should happen May 31st if it happens on time. At that point in time, when school districts will know what funding is appropriated by grant from the Illinois State Board of Education and the state of Illinois.
Thanks, Mary.
Sure.
Thanks, John and Keith.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any more questions? Okay. There are two parts of this. One if we are deciding to approve the roofing, and one if we are rejecting all bids. The administration has made the recommendation that we reject all bids for the Meadowview roof project. So I'll make a motion that we reject all bids for the Meadowview roof project, and we'll go from there.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Miller,
No.
is that a nay? I'm sorry.
Nay. Yeah, nay.
Mac,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Nash.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is a motion to approve the health and dental insurance renewals for the 2021 fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
John, you want to cover that, or Mary, whoever?
I can cover that.
Okay.
As was presented at the last Board of Education meeting, the action item before the board tonight is to approve the renewal rates for the benefit plan for health insurance, dental, and life insurance. And the benefit plan year is effective July 1st through June 30th of 2021. In addition to the renewal rates for health, dental, and life, the board has the option to approve benefit plan enhancement and to add the management tools, Naturally Slim virtual visits, and additional education on the Blue Cross Blue Shield cost estimator tool. And so those rates that are before the board tonight represent a reduction in costs for the HMO of 7.3% and for the PPO and the high deductible plan of 8.1%. Are there any further questions?
What was the overall savings of the plan that the district is going to see?
I don't have that figure at my fingertips.
I think it was 8.1 or 8.3 or something. Does that sound right, Mary?
That's the percentage, but I don't have that equated in dollars.
Okay.
There is a cost sharing component, of course, because we have a different contribution structure for employees single versus the structure for those dependents that are added.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
And hi, Mary, this is Tamika. Just a clarifying question. What's being considered or on the table this evening is the plan. I'll just use the word basic at its basic level, and then it's the plan plus the enhancements like the natural fit and other things.
That's
so we get okay. Thank you.
Okay. Was there, tongue tie here today. We had a motion and a second. Was there anything that we wanted to amend with that, or did anybody have any concerns? Mika, I kind of heard that you might have had a concern with part of that.
Yeah, Jim. So I guess I don't believe I saw any data in terms of usage around the enhancements, and I'm just wondering if it would be better to maximize the decreased benefit as opposed to having the enhancements, which I think one of them are already cost-free benefit, and I think the Natural Slim over time there could be the potential for costs associated with that. I'm curious as to if we have any utilization numbers that would suggest our demographic would be inclined to use this, and then subsequently, warrant going with something that may add costs later on.
Mhm. Of course, these are new tools that would be added, and so it's difficult to predict the number of members who would choose to use these plans. However, when we look at the upfront cost to participate, the cost benefit to the naturally slim, for example, is the cost avoidance for other more complicated health situations. If we can stave off the complications for weight concerns, if we can stave off the complications for diabetes, this is where the cost benefit win is. So yes, there is a cost up front, but we're avoiding other health or medical expenses that may occur for that individual member later, should they not be able to address their weight issues.
Sure, and I'm not so much saying that we know what it means to our population, but I was just curious if the supplier was able to publish anything as to what it meant for like kind quality, organizations of our size. How many of them adopted this? Like, I'm all for the cost avoidance. I guess part of what I'm thinking in my head is, well, part of the reason why we've seen this decrease is because we are healthier and tend to be have better wellness and care of our bodies right here in the district, which drove the decrease. So in terms, I guess I'm struggling with six hand and this on one side where you have our population already, it sounds like taking these cost avoidance measures and living healthier, more well lives, hence the decrease in premiums, as opposed to a cost increase for something that they may or may not find beneficial because they're already living a healthier lifestyle anyway. So just curious as to if there was any data set that would that we could compare ourselves to better inform utilization of this and help me better understand if it's something that kind of warrants going down that path.
Right. So GCG, who is the district's broker consultant for employee health insurance, of course, they have a portfolio of clients, and they have recommended these programs as programs that they have found to be well received and successful with their menu of other insurance clients. Now, we don't have that numeric data that I think you're looking for in terms of the percentage of individuals who choose to participate. I can't tell you that 10% of the client base participates or 15% chooses to participate. But they, through their portfolio of clients, through their book of business, they have seen that these two programs, Naturally Slim and Virtually Visits, are filling a need that exists within the membership. So those individuals who have weight concerns, this program, Naturally Slim, has been very well received. For those patients or those members who don't have a primary care physician, the virtual visits provides an opportunity for members to have access to a physician via the website or a mobile app. And we really see that as being tremendously valuable when we want to be encouraging wellness, and we want to be able to provide a direct channel for people who need that immediate access. And again, this is another program that GCG has indicated has been very well received by their book of business for other clients. But I don't have that numeric data to tell you the percentage of their other members who have taken advantage of these programs.
No, that was helpful, Mary. I guess the last thing that came to mind as you were talking just about their client portfolio and journal memberships, have we heard directly from our district employees about some of these enhancements to programs, or is this really just kind of GCG coming forward saying, hey, this is what we are hearing just from the global membership body, or is this something so more universally as opposed to our district specifically kind of raising the voice around, hey, we'd like to see some more benefits in these spaces?
Right. Well, as you know, this recommendation comes from the District Insurance Advisory Committee. So we began meeting in January, and we as a group identified what our goals were and what information we were interested in, and what we felt that we needed to learn about insurance and tools and what options were available. And so the insurance committee was made up of representatives from the teaching staff, as well as the PSRP, principal, and a board member, and other central office administrators. And so it was through this committee that came together and vetted several different management tools. And we, through our conversation, honed in on virtual visits and Naturally Slim as being two. I believe we probably looked at about 8 different management tools, but these were the 2 that really resonated as being interesting and appealing and aligning with the wellness and health goals of our district employees. And this comes from the committee, who represent their peers and their colleagues.
Okay, good deal. Thanks, Mary.
What might be helpful too is this is only for this year, and when we meet with the insurance advisory committee again, it might be one of those things where you can look at it and say, all right, this wasn't well used, or isn't what's sort of the benefit, and then it can be taken back out.
Yes, that's true. The committee will continue to meet, and as we review data, and we can consider how effective or how appealing or what the participation rates were, and should we see the participation rate be lower than we'd like it to be, and we can make that decision about the cost benefit, and we can move away from it, so should we choose to.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so we had a motion and a second.
Mm-hmm.
So roll call, please.
Graff,
Aye.
Mack, Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Knapp,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. All right, making sure I stay on task here. Motion to approve the Arbor Food Services contract extension.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, I can speak to this contract renewal. As presented at the last Board of Education meeting, we highlighted that the district next year will be the 4th year in a set of 5, the 5-year agreement with Arbor for food services. The contract that exists with Arbor management indicates the annual increase for meals is tracked by the Consumer Price Index, specifically the Food Away from Home Index. And for calendar year 2019, that index was 3.1%. The contract further caps the annual increase in expenses in the cost to the district at 3%. And so the recommendation then for this contract renewal is equal to that limit of 3% as specified in the contract. And so you can see that the rates, breakfast, lunch, a la carte, and the summer breakfast do reflect that 3% contractual increase. Further, as you well know, the state of Illinois has made some modifications to the Illinois minimum wage rate. And so there is also a contract addendum that would need to be approved by the board. And that contract addendum is required per the fixed fee allowance as specified by the National School Lunch Program. And in essence, segregates that additional increment of minimum wage as Arbor fulfills its contract for the school district. And so each individual term, January 1, 2020 to July, there's one increment of minimum wage increase and so on. And so that is required per the National School Lunch Program, that fixed fee allowance be an addendum to the contract. So those two contract approvals are before the board tonight for consideration.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, roll call.
Mac,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Nash.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve the meal prices for 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Yes, I can speak to the recommendation for the meal prices for the upcoming school year. Again, the National School Lunch Program specifies a formula called the Paid Equity Lunch Formula. And this formula is designed to ensure that for those students who are paying for the lunch, that it is on par or equates to the funding provided for the free and reduced students. And when we look at that formula, the formula indicates the student lunch could be $3 per meal. And the National School Lunch Program also caps that increment to 10 cents. And so the recommendation is partial. The recommendation is an increase of 5 cents for the student breakfast, the student lunch, and the milk. The adult lunch, the recommendation for that meal is an increase of 25 cents. Any further questions?
No. Okay. Roll call, please.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have a motion to approve an unpaid suspension for employment of Timothy Christian as an employee of the school district effective immediately.
Hello, this is Chris, if anybody has any questions.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Anybody have any questions for Chris regarding this? I know we had extensive discussions in closed session. No? Okay, roll call.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. Okay, next is to
Hey, Jim, can I interrupt real quick? Sorry. Did we, and I apologize if we did and I fell asleep, but did we vote on the motion to approve the weather guard roofing, the patching? I know we voted on to reject the bids of the Meadowview roof project, but I think there's something that we're supposed to make a motion to approve the patching.
I think our option was to do the whole roof or to reject it. So there is no bidding on the patching. That was just going to be done by staff and that.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'll just chime in real quick. The way it was structured on the agenda is per legal counsel. It was to give the board the option if you wanted to proceed with the roof, the full redo of the roof. That would have been the first motion, or the second motion would have been to reject all bids to delay until next year. The patching would be something that we would bring at a separate board meeting if needed.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. The next one is motion to approve the Director of Operation and Maintenance. The new one, as our two lead people in O&M are retiring this year. as we are replacing them with one personnel. His name is Adam Halperin. He was pretty well vetted through the process through HR. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about him, or?
Sure. Well, I can tell you a little bit about the process. Then I do have him. He will be joining us so you can welcome him, and he can introduce himself. But Adam's coming to us from Zion 6, where he has been director of operations and maintenance. Prior to that, he was a supervisor of buildings and grounds at Fremont 79. Adam went through many rounds of interviews over the past month and a half. He went through the application process, our video interview process, and then 3 virtual in-person interviews through members of the cabinet, a larger interview process with members of operations and maintenance team on there as well, and then a final with the full cabinet. Adam stands out, and we're excited to have him aboard, and that his educational philosophy regarding buildings and grounds closely aligns with that of teaching and learning. So, very happy that we found him, and we love Keith, we love Marlo. Adam's got big shoes to fill, but we're welcoming him aboard pending the vote.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Matt,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Graff,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Nash.
Aye.
All right, so I just sent Adam a text, and since the live stream, I'm monitoring the live stream too, it's a little bit behind. So I didn't want him to wait for this. So he should be popping in here in a second to say hello. Any second.
Hey,
Hey, there he is. Hello, Adam. You got to take yourself off mute.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Didn't see the red button down there. Good evening, everybody.
Good
Hey, Adam.
evening.
Hi, Adam.
A pleasure to meet
Welcome.
everybody.
Well
Hey,
done.
Adam,
Welcome.
it's Chris Volk. You want to give I gave a very brief synopsis of your past 2 positions, but do you want to tell us a little bit about the board, a little bit about yourself, so they know you as a person?
Absolutely. My name's Adam Halperin. I currently live in Lake Villa, not far from the district itself. Excuse me. I'm a father of 2, happily married. Spent 20 plus years in the field doing heating and air conditioning, plumbing, electrical, construction, residential, industrial. I started as an after-school job when I was 14, 15 years old. I was a little grunt who pushed the brooms, got the trucks for the guys, and took a beating from them all. Made my way up through the ranks to head installer, to lead service tech, ran multiple crews from here to the Bahamas. A couple years back, I had a buddy who was a director of buildings and grounds. He still is. And he turned and he said, I have a job for you at a school district. And I said, I can't take that pay cut. There's no way. I ended up going into it. And within my first 24 hours in the job, I knew I absolutely loved it. I was not out there hustling and bustling. Instead, I was doing something that I was good at and absolutely positively fell in love with. I'm one of those people who likes to take as much knowledge and information from people and utilize it and be able to push it out through my work and what I do. So from that point there, I just constantly grew and grew. Within a year of being in the district, I was hired at Fremont in Mundelein as an HVAC technician / head maintenance. within the year, I was asked to move up to the supervisor of buildings and grounds from the work that I was able to perform and the dollars that I was able to save for them. At that point there, they put me through schooling over through IASBO. I got my facilities designation program through them. And then I also went through it and got my second facilities designation program along the lines with, I teach a class for them within the program. I'm currently involved with them also with starting to rewrite a book on preventative maintenance and on the maintenance side of it, helping out with a bunch of other cohorts from different districts from McHenry to Lake County to Cook County. I also went through and got my multiple certifications with the AFE and with IASBO, and continuously grow every day and love my job. I love what I do. I love being able to go to work knowing that I'm not there to try and pull money out of your pockets, to sell somebody a furnace, an air conditioner, whatever the case may be. I'm there to keep a building running, keep the children in there. I also find that on the buildings and grounds side, we are educators, whether it's on the custodial or the maintenance team. We're all part of it. We're teaching those children. We're bringing them in there. So this is really a great venture along the way. It's been a great learning process and growth, complete growth.
Good. Well, welcome.
Welcome,
everybody.
Welcome.
Awesome. Welcome.
Glad to have you.
I am thrilled to be here. I have not been able to sleep since that call.
Good.
I just want to,
oh, go ahead, Paul.
I want to share my story that, Adam, you had me in the interview when you said you made comments about the Common Core state standards and how they are impacted through the operations and maintenance department. I was done. I
bet.
There's so many
That's
things
awesome.
that people don't realize on the maintenance side of it, and different things that you're doing throughout the district that you can utilize for these children, especially with the Common Core end of it. The Grays Lake District has the solar, and it's one of the big things. You can use it from math to science to teaching children today about the sustainability aspect. And think about, as we're going through with the pandemic right now with COVID, look at what's happening to our environment. It's becoming cleaner. The air is becoming cleaner. Different things. So, and that just goes to show that different ways we can build on that sustainability and teach it to the kids. We'll be better off.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam. We appreciate you coming in and joining us tonight. We'll get you in touch with Keith and get you visiting all the buildings, of course, practicing safe distancing and wearing the masks. But we're welcome, and we're happy to have you aboard.
Thank you, everybody. I look forward to years of working with everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Adam.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, so next we have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 administrative contracts with an increase of 3.6%.
So moved.
I'll second. Any discussion?
So is there any way we could consider postponing this motion until after June 8th? And I want to be really clear on why I'm asking. I think we have an amazing leadership team, all of you. I think you're incredible and you've worked incredible hours and you have incredible talent. And I think you deserve stability and knowing that the raises that you get will be maintained, not just next year, but after that too. And I think there's a lot that we don't know in our revenue stream right now. And it would be perhaps wise to make sure that what we tell you we're going to pay you will actually be within the budget of our district, and we don't know what the budget is until the revenue, the first installment of the levy comes in. So I'm wondering if we can postpone or table this motion until our June meeting, which I recognize is not ideal, but I think if we do that, we'll be in a better position to make sure that the raises are consistent with the revenue coming in.
And Mary or John, you want to speak to your ideas on where we're at with the budget and the raises that are proposed? Anyone?
So Mary is currently working on next year's budget, so I'll let her speak a little bit more to it. The little piece of information I guess I want to just emphasize is, I know it's a little hard to talk about raises and things like that immediately after an amended budget presentation where we talk about a large deficit, but I just want to again emphasize from the amended budget perspective of the current fiscal year that the idea is not that we're running this large deficit this year because of overspending or anything along those lines, but more just the delay in the timing of payments as opposed to not receiving payments. So just because there's a deficit this year doesn't mean that we won't be receiving those monies at all. In light of that, that might mean that next year fiscally might look better just because of the timing of some of those payments. But I'll let Mary speak a little bit more to that.
Mary, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. When we considered our plans for next year's budget and the following years, of course, we are looking at how we're trending. And of course, salaries and benefits relate to people. And that represents the most significant portion of our budget. And when we make our projections and we plan for the next year, the cost for staff is our first area of expense and our first area of investment, if you will. And so when we look at our revenue streams, be it property taxes or the revenue that we will receive from the state and federal sources, it is most directly allocated towards the cost of staffing and providing instruction to our students. And so, yes, we do believe that this recommendation for an increase is an increase that the district can afford and does have the monies to fund.
Okay. So Christy asked about tabling the motion until June. Do we have anybody else that would like to do the same, or should we move with a vote? Okay. I guess roll call.
Drac,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
So again, I just want to reiterate that I think the leadership team is amazing. But in this community right now, there are people that don't have paychecks. And our last meeting was taken off YouTube. And I want to make sure that our leadership is paid consistently and that the 4 positions that are coming up on the board, that this isn't an invitation for people to come in and tell us that this was irresponsible. With that said, I cannot. So, no.
Nash,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye. Okay. Next is a motion to approve the 3.6% increase for the non-union district office staff for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
So moved.
And we need a second.
Second.
who was that second? I'm sorry.
That was Christy,
Braden,
Tamika, and then Christy Braden.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
okay. Any discussion on that? Or kind of falls in the same line with the last one? Okay, we're gonna have a roll call.
Miller,
Again, very much appreciate the PSRP, but at this point, I can't commit to a number. I could commit in June, but not now. So nay.
Nash,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve a resolution to schedule a public hearing on the amended budget.
So moved.
Second.
And this is the June 8th, is that correct, or June 10th?
June 10th, I believe, yes. So we'd have the hearing at about 6 o'clock before the board meeting, and then it would be an action item at the June 10th board meeting for adoption.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, any further questions on that? Okay, roll call.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
All right, we're up to unfinished business. Next one is a continued discussion regarding cash flow projections. I believe this is you, Mary.
Yes. As you recall, at the April 15th Board of Education meeting, we began this conversation about the district's cash flow. So as we have entered into this time period of closure due to COVID-19, there has been uncertainty about the timing of revenue receipts from local, state, and federal sources. And since we last met, April 15th, we have good news to share in that the Lake County Board made the decision not to defer penalties and interest charges for late property tax payments for the first installment, which would have effectively delayed the collection of the first installment until July. Had they not made that decision, we potentially could have had some challenges with our cash balances. So we are fortunate to be able to share that good news about that decision that the Lake County Board made. We do know that the property tax bills are going to be mailed by the Lake County Treasurer on May 4th, and the due date for the first installment will be June 8th, and for the second installment will be September 8th. The Lake County Treasurer has also notified all taxing agencies that the distribution dates, and I'll just name the first three because they fall within this fiscal year, are May 21st, June 4th, and June 18th. And so we can expect to receive the first three distributions of the first installment of the 2019 property tax levy. As far as state funding, the timing of receipt for state funding, as Mr. John Herron commented in his presentation of the amended budget, we have received indication from our state associations and the Illinois State Board of Education that we expect to receive all EBF funds, evidence-based funding funds, this year on time. And so we'll continue to receive 2 per month. Those are distributed August through June. We received 22 payments. We expect to receive the remaining distributions of evidence-based funds on time. What may very well be delayed, and as John had commented, we made an assumption, and he's incorporated this into his amended budget, that the district will receive 3 of the 4 quarterly payments for the mandated categoricals, which is transportation, the regular transportation reimbursement, the special education transportation reimbursement, and the special ed private facility reimbursement. We've seen in the past when there have been economic challenges within the state, certainly the Great Recession of 2008, we did see delayed payments from the state of Illinois for mandated categoricals. So we'd expect that pattern might very well exist. So with the good news from the Lake County Board regarding the timing of collection for the first installment of the property tax bills, evidence-based funding being on time, expected to be on time, a delay in the fourth quarterly payment of the mandated categoricals, we've taken all of this into account and updated the district's cash flow projection. And we see that we will have sufficient cash to continue to pay salaries and benefits and our vendors through May, June, July, August. We expect to have roughly $16 million in cash on hand by September 1st. And then, of course, in September, we will be receiving the second installment of the 2019 property tax levy. So, intense focus on that time period from now until September 1st. And we see in our cash projections, with these assumptions being the best information that we have at this time, that we will have sufficient cash to pay our salaries, benefits, and bills. When we met in April 15th, we did talk about wanting to be prepared should we need to borrow. And John and I did connect. We did reach out to PMA Financial Services, who provides financial advisory services to the district, and have a conversation with the representatives there about borrowing and the district's options for short-term borrowing should we need that. Now, again, I have to reiterate that we don't see that need before September 1st, but I do think it's great information for the board to have at your fingertips should there be a future need down the road. And I'm not suggesting that there is, but I do think it's important for the board to have this information at their fingertips. So the memo from PMA is attached to your board agenda and outlines some short-term borrowing options the district could consider. Before we touch on that, though, I just want to highlight that before the school district, let me back up, should there in the future be a need to address a cash issue, a cash concern, the district has several options available to them, several tools before we even look at borrowing. The first one would be Interfund Loans. The Illinois compiled statutes do allow for interfund loans between the education, operation and maintenance, and transportation funds. So that's a tool that would be available to the district to resolve any cash needs by fund. The district also currently has roughly $3 million in the working cash fund itself. And so the district would have the opportunity to authorize working cash fund loans. In other words, a loan from the working cash fund to the education fund, should that be the fund of greatest need. In addition to working cash fund loans, the district could authorize an abatement of the working cash fund or an abolishment of the working cash fund. And then lastly, of course, there are permanent fund transfers, and that involves a resolution in the public hearing. But again, that would be a transfer from one fund to the fund in need. And that's an option available to the district as well. I would suggest that if in the future there should be a cash need, we're going to first look at these options, interfund loans, working cash fund options, or permanent fund transfers first before we consider short-term borrowing. Any questions about those tools before I move on? Okay. And then if you look at the memo from Tammy Beck-Lashelmo, who's the representative we work with at PMA on these matters. She has created a summary of short-term lending options that are most common for school districts should a school district need to bridge a cash situation. So the two most common tools that school districts use in these types of situations when they arise is a tax anticipation warrant, or otherwise known as a TAW or TAW, which is a warrant that's issued, just as it said, in anticipation of property taxes to be received. So another entity, it could be a bank or another unit of government or another school district, would lend the district money in anticipation of our future receipt of property taxes, and then we would then repay that warrant when those property taxes are received. The other common option is a line of credit, and that line of credit is only available if you have a financial institution or a bank who's open to making that loan to the school district. And the rates of interest at this time for these types of borrowings are 1% to 2%. And as I said earlier, we're not in a place of need at this time. And so of course the rates will be dependent upon the market at the time, should the district in the future have a cash need. Just to wrap up, I want to, of course, reiterate that the cash flow does not show a deficiency at this time or a need to borrow. The administration will continue to update the cash projections as new information becomes available. So when we came together April 15th at the last meeting, we were unsure what decision the Lake County Board would make regarding the collection of the first installment of property taxes. We now know that, and so we were able to update the cash flow accordingly. As we anticipate the authorization of a budget by the state of Illinois for the upcoming year, and we learn what the appropriations are for education and the funding for EBF and the other grants available to us provided by the state of Illinois, then of course we'll update the cash projections based on that new information. In the meantime, we're updating based on what our actual expenditures are. And so we're really fine-tuning this each week as we move through time with new information that's available to us. We'll continue to provide these types of updates to the board so that you can be confident that you will be apprised of our current cash position at all times as we move through the end of this fiscal year and into the summer, and of course the start of next fiscal year. Are there any questions from the board?
No one? Okay. All right, so thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. Next, we're moving on to new business, and the first one is the discussion of the performance services contract. This is all based for the solar panels.
Correct. So the quick summary of that is essentially this is an ongoing maintenance agreement, so to speak, with performance services. Not that they're going to be providing the maintenance on the actual units themselves as much as offering the service of continuously monitoring the solar fields to ensure that they're living up to the life cycle and living up to the productions that they've originally promised. And they'll be available for making annual reports on the status and the production of those units during that time. So this piece was, it's my understanding this piece was discussed previously as before the whole project even started. They just waited to finalize this portion of it until after all the construction had been completed. So this is the last little piece of that.
Anybody have any questions on that contract? Okay to move it forward.
John, just a quick one. When can we expect to see the annual reports? Or the next one?
We haven't scheduled those, but I know that Performance Services is more than willing to kind of schedule those. I'll reach out to them and talk to them about when that would be available and when we can set that up. I'd like to try to have that, and I'll talk with Mary about this, to try to get an annual rotation of like, okay, this is a February board meeting item or something along those lines. But I'll work with Performance Services and Mary and get you an update of when that annual report would happen for you, for the board.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we last heard from them around February of last year. And at that time, I don't think all the sites were online yet. So that'd be, I mean, something sooner, but then a regular schedule as well.
Absolutely. I didn't want to throw out February and have you think that it was February was when we were going to do it. I'm going to try to see what time we can do it sooner, but I'll work with Mary and them on that. But then we'll also plan on when does the annual rotation happen for you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Next is the first look at the board meeting calendar for the 2021 school year. We are still slated to start at 6:30 with all locations being at GMS. So this will give you an opportunity to look at it and see if we have any conflicts between multiple board members, because we can always reschedule it ahead of time as we go here. Was everybody okay still with the 6:30 start time? Okay, everybody still good with 440 North Barron is our location, or this nice virtual world?
Yes.
All right, so we'll move that forward.
Jim,
yep.
This is Chris Wolk.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want there's two things that I wanted to bring to your attention. And we've been in discussions with them at leadership. As we take a look through these dates, February 17th is Ash Wednesday. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that, in case you practice. This year we also had a Passover, right? Correct? Passover, yes. Fell on the last couple weeks ago. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that date. And then we were looking at some April dates regarding HR legal updates. I think we're set to go, but just wanted to make everybody aware that we might have to come back and share, like maybe we might move some dates around in April.
Okay.
Just wanted to make everybody aware of those two dates.
Yep. Okay, so if anybody has anything that really conflicts with them, if we can bring them at the next meeting. So if we have to make adjustments, we can do that.
The only other thing that I cannot remember if this was actually the case, but I feel like last year our September meeting conflicted with back to school night at least Meadowview. So, you know.
Okay.
So when taking a look, that I'm sure has not been scheduled yet. So we would let's just make sure we work around whatever the board meeting ends up being scheduled for.
Right. So once this gets approved, then that will immediately go to the administrative team, and we'll make that an effort to make sure that we're not overscheduling things.
Yeah,
that,
I know it's hard.
It is often difficult to schedule around the high school and all the different schools levels, but it is one that we should be avoiding. So that will be addressed through a leadership meeting once the dates get picked.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. All right, next on new business is, I'm going to lump these two together because my guess is they're connected. Is the discussion of the contract for Durham revision and Durham contract renewal.
Yes, they're very intimately tied. So we're currently working with legal and with Durham on renegotiating the current year contract. So in light of our discussions at the April 15th board meeting, and in light of some of our connections with other school districts in the area, despite having a contract with Durham to pay the full amount, 100% for 174 school days, Durham has graciously agreed to a proration of that amount in light of the changing circumstances we all find ourselves in. So right now that those negotiations are ongoing, but we are currently near 85% of what that total daily rate would have been through the end of the school year. And also, I know that this was discussed at the last board meeting. There are some stipulations built into the contract about how that 85% gets used. So the idea being we really want to show our appreciation for our bus drivers, and the contract is structured in such a way that the money has to go to the bus drivers first. So we were very happy to get that included in the contract. It's such an amazing thing in our district at how personally connected our bus drivers are with our students. So we were excited to make sure that this was a guarantee in the contract of this money was going to go to ensure that those wonderful employees of Durham were going to be taken care of in this time. So we're just bringing this to your attention. You've gotten a chance to see a version of the contract. It's pretty close to finalized. We're just making sure, having our legal go through it one more time to make sure all of our bases are covered. But we'll be bringing this back for renewal at the May 15th board meeting, May 13th board meeting, one of those two dates. And then obviously this is intimately tied with the renewal for next year as well. We'll just bring them both together at the same time. At this point, the negotiations are that we will not be doing any changes to next year, just in light of, at this point, we're still thinking school's going to be open next year, so there might not be any changes. That being said, we might build into the contract, like in this case, we had to specially revise for an 85% proration of the deal. We might build into the contract for a longer term, like if this happens again, or if there is another circumstance that pops up, how do we prorate at that point? So this might become memorialized as part of the renewal agreement as well for next year. So that's why they're both connected together, but they're also, those will be brought back at the next board meeting.
Anybody have any questions on those? Okay. The next is discussion of the community engagement vision. I assume this is Stephen or Christy.
Yeah, so this is the chart that I showed you before. And again, Jason, to your point of transparency and distributing something about the assumptions that we're working under, the constraints we're working under, and the scenarios that we're planning for. So if we could spend just a few minutes, if you can take a look at this, I'll share it again. Anyone jump in, and what are the bullet points, and then how to condense those into 3 to 5 assumptions. If we have the energy to do that tonight, that'd be great. Or if you want to postpone it, we can do that too.
Well, it's hard for me, Christy. It's hard to
ahead.
see when you share it on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it'd be better if you just email it out to us, and then we can take a look at it, and we can discuss it either like at the next meeting, or would that work? You can hit I guess you can hit your highlights today, and then we can have some time to look at it, because it's hard for me to see on the screen when you share it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, I can definitely email it to you, or we can create a Google Doc. And then do you think it warrants a special meeting, or do we want to wait 2 weeks before we do it again?
What does the rest of the board think? Do we want to try and hold a special meeting to do this, or can it hold off for 2 weeks?
Well, I guess could Christy maybe just speak to her highlights, and then that will kind of help me inform whether or not I think we need a special meeting, or if it can hold off for the 2 weeks.
Works for me.
Yeah. Truly, this was just me kind of vomiting my ideas on this in anticipation that everyone would add to it. So do you want me to read it to you, or I can share it and then you can?
I guess, Christy, for me, if you can just kind of lay out your purpose statement, kind of vision forward, and just the main objectives of what you're trying to accomplish with it, and what I can do to kind of add value to what you're working towards.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from IASB and from some other strategic webinars that I've listened to in the past is it's a good idea to let the public know what we're working under. So for instance, I would guess most people are not aware that of the financial constraints that we're looking at and where the district is with cash flow. And I suspect there'll be some questions about that. So if we were able to identify, say, you know, these are the decisions that are coming down the pike. Here's the information we do know. Here's what we don't know. And then here are 3 scenarios that we're planning for. So one might be that we start school virtually next in the fall. Another might be that we start school with some hybrid program. And then another idea might be that we've, you know, found some innovative way to use this virtual classroom that we've just built, and this is what we're thinking about, and then give them an opportunity to attend our meetings or make comments. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, and I would think that at some point we could just through email or something just identify what the assumptions are, and then identify what the scenarios are, so that people are not in the dark and they're not surprised when they see some of our decisions.
Yeah, I like
Is
that.
that what you're asking?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's helpful. So I guess to then go back to Jim's question as to do we want to, you know, take a stab at it tonight or push it out for our next meeting. I think I'd like the latter, to push it out for our next meeting, because I'd like to revisit notes from the IASB conference that we attended last November in Chicago, because there's quite a bit of things that you said in terms of public transparency that a few of the workshops I attended really spoke to this and had some really good ideas and best practices that I'd like to just kind of pull forward and refresh on.
Absolutely. I am up for anything.
So Christy, your idea seems a little bit bigger than what I had envisioned too. Mine was, as typically happens to me, it was finance focused, and yours seems a little broader than that. So without adding things to other people's queues unnecessarily, the piece that I was thinking of was just looking at the financial piece of it, you know, a couple of different scenarios, worst case, most likely, that kind of thing. And that to me doesn't seem like board work. I don't know, but what you're presenting seems a bit broader than that. So I think, you know, if you could email your document to us and give us a little time to look it over and ponder it, that would be helpful.
I am happy to do that. And then do we want to invite other people, other stakeholders to add to it or to comment on it in some way, either via a survey that goes out?
As far as outside stakeholders or internal? I think we need to work on the document internally before we look at bringing outside people in. So we know what we're looking to try and produce before we try and take outside opinions, and all of a sudden we have this big document or this totally screwed up document that doesn't work for anything.
Okay.
Okay, so you'll email that to us, correct?
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, and then we'll put that as a discussion again for next board meeting. It gives us some time to digest it, and if anybody has any comments for ideas for the document or the premise of what we're trying to do, please make sure you send it to either Christy or Stephen Mack, because you guys are working on that together, correct? Yeah. So if you can send your comments or questions or concerns to one of those two, just remember you can't send it to both. Yeah, send it to one.
Can I create a Google Doc, or does that violate OMA? I would assume that violates OMA, doesn't it? Because we're having the discussion.
It would if we're all contributing to it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
then I'll send it out as
back and forth.
Okay, I'll send it out as a PDF, and then if you want to shoot me any additions that you want me to make to it, then I can do that, and then we can discuss it at the next meeting. That sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so was Paul taking good notes on what our topics for future agenda are?
I was taking notes, so correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. First, I heard Christy Braden talk about an EdRed report. Do you want to do that as a board, one of your agenda items, or do you want it just in information?
We've typically just done that as part of board reports, Paul. I don't know that it needs to be a separate agenda item, but thanks.
Okay. I was paying attention. So of things that would be coming next time. I also
You were.
Performance services contract.
Okay.
So John is saying yes to that. A decision about the board meeting calendar. I'm seeing yeses for that. The Durham contract revision. I see a yes for that. Durham contract renewal. Okay, I got another one with that. I had some information, I think through an email, that there was question about the identification of the school treasurer. John, was that a true statement or is that a future statement?
Let me get back to you on that. Typically, that's something that's handled from the superintendent's office, because it's a little awkward for the business manager to recommend themselves as the school treasurer.
No, I understand.
But that's why I'm saying let's, in
in
light of the current circumstances, let's, I'll wait until Lynn gets back for that.
Okay, I think it has to be on the agenda, but
Yeah, it has to be done every year.
okay. And then I also have a combination of a communication plan with an updated financial information, work on that, and the community engagement visioning. So I don't know if those two are eventually going to merge, as Jason outlined that one was a little bit part of the other, but I don't know how we want to call that, but that's probably some tweaking. But I have something listed for an update and a continuation about those two topics. Is that clear?
Yep.
Okay. Those are the ones that I have. Did I miss anything from anybody else?
I think we were just going to probably hear more on a budget update if anything has changed in between now and then, correct?
I'm happy to talk about it at the next meeting. Originally, the plan was to just have it be part of the superintendent update that goes to the board. The reasoning for that is we have to post it 30 days prior to June 10th for the annual hearing. So we wanted to get you that information before the next board meeting if anything changed from what I presented tonight. So I'm happy to review that at that meeting.
I had Friday, May 8th written down for some reason.
Correct.
Was one of your target dates, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We'll be posting it that day, so it complies with the 30-day notice, and it should go out in her in Lynn's superintendent update that day.
Okay.
Was there anything else that I missed?
I'd like to add, Mary had indicated that we would be getting frequent cash flow projection updates, and I'm wondering if it's appropriate to do it every board meeting. I really like the format she used and would love to see that continue, basically with a narrative of latest developments and then ending with, you know, a best case or most likely or whatever, worst case, most likely case table that just says, you know, here based on these assumptions or anything that's changed since we last spoke, here's where we think we're headed.
Okay. Does that work for you, Mary?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was able to learn because I could do that.
I also was told that after this, there is at least one public comment.
Okay.
And so Chris has been working on that.
Jim, Paul, could I bring forward a topic? So, Paul, I know a survey had gone out in terms of the Diversity and Equity Committee in terms of engagement and moving forward, but if an update from the Equity Committee could be brought forward to the board, and we can engage them for, you know, next steps or guidance as we need.
Right. Just to share, because of school being closed, we sent a survey about if people were interested in having meetings like this. And so we haven't heard from everybody yet, so I wasn't compiling it. But yes, the overall feeling has been, yes, they want to, the committee wants to continue to meet virtually and begin planning of next year's work. So Tamika, I think that's can easily be one of the committee reports. Because we'll know much more, but for sure, I think it's a good topic, and thank you for bringing that up because we want to continue that work. We're actually wanting to make sure that we're addressing this closure as a topic of equity as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
I was just going to mention to Christy, if you would like me to attach that document to the next board agenda to make it easier for everyone, I'm happy to do so. You can just send that to me.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
This is Christy. I have a one to bring forward as well. I'd like us to just have a discussion about how we are both keeping our local legislators updated about the work that is being done within the district, the challenges that we're facing legislatively, otherwise, materials, resources we've gotten so that they understand kind of what's being received by the staff and the school boards. And then also, Ed Red had let us know that they, because not a lot is happening with the General Assembly, they have created these subject matter work groups to discuss issues that have been submitted as a legislative priority for the year. And so we have both our Melinda Bush is on a few, Sam Yingling is on a few. Neither is on there is an education work group, neither is on it, but Sam Yingling is on food accessibility, housing and homelessness prevention, and he's the co-chair of the local government work group in the House. And then Melinda is actually on that local government work group in the Senate. And I do think there's ties here. I'd love to bring, and I can put a document together with some proposals for us to react to versus starting from scratch. But I'd like us to talk about what's important for them to know about us, our work, and what's important for us to know about their priorities right now, and the best way to communicate with them and establish that relationship. So I'll propose that I put something together for us to take a look at together in terms of communication and knowledge sharing between those two folks.
Okay, are you looking at the next meeting or a little bit farther out?
If we have a package, it sounds like we have a lot to talk about at the next meeting, so I think it can move out one meeting, but I wouldn't want to prolong it too much, only because stuff moves fast when it moves.
Right. Okay, so we'll if it looks like we have too much for next meeting, then we'll look at pushing it out.
That's fine.
The following one.
Okay.
And I wrote
Thank
that
you.
on the list as communicating with legislators and the Ed Red work group information. Is that
That's
how
beautiful, Paul. Thank you for making it a bullet point.
I'm listening. Trying to listen.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it. So we did have, I heard a public comment, and someone could read that.
Yes. You want me to read it? You want to read it?
No, go ahead.
All right. What's that?
I didn't see a public comment, so you'll have to read it.
Sure. Public comment from user Kristen. For second public comment from resident and parent Kristen Roy Hupel. Thank you to Dr. Glickman for her exceptional communication with parents. She has been clear, reassuring, and compassionate.
Okay.
And that's it for public comment.
Oh, okay. Well, it's easy. I didn't have to answer a question. It's always good when I don't have to answer questions. Okay. That ends the meeting for tonight. We do not have a need for a closed session meeting tonight. So looking for a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
So moved.
Second.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Liebman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
Okay, that is it. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and all the administrative staff that at least I see pictures of people. I don't know if they're actually there anymore.